about gender-based violence and abuse, you make that kind of comment, and of course I ignore that comment. So but I'm going to take us back to the work that you are doing before we come back to tech facilitated gender-based violence and abuse, because that's the theme for this year's 16th Day of Activism announced by the UN Women. So but before we go there, I want you to talk about the work that you are doing to fight gender-based violence and abuse and support girls in schools.
Thank you. At Teenage Network, so I work with Teenage Network. I currently lead program designs and implementation at Teenage Network. And one of our major focus at Teenage Network is to ensure that girls, wherever it is that they find themselves, feel safe. And we can all acknowledge the fact that so far, in this country, no place is safe for girls.
Sad.
I mean, what have we not recorded in this country is we've recorded cases of girls who have been molested within the four walls of the classrooms. We've recorded cases of girls who have been molested right inside the church, right inside the mosque, on the way to the market, right in the market, even within the four corners of their homes, right? So that's kind of answers the person's question, because we'll continue to have whatever related, as much as people keep preventing ways of addressing or posing dangers to girls, then we'll keep also looking at how we can best address that. So at Teenage Network, we work primarily around promoting safe schools, and recently, I mean for the past 2 years, we've worked with the FCT Education Secretariat to see how can we fortify our classes, how can we ensure that our schools are free from all forms of violence, especially sexual violence, because that is more that's like the most pervasive form of gender-based violence. It has quite a number of consequences or impacts on the girls, apart from the psychological effect that it has on the girls. Girls could also get sexually transmitted diseases. They could get pregnant, and have to drop from school. They could have unwanted pregnancy. So the consequences of sexual violence is enormous and limited. So we decided to focus on that. And over a period of 2 years, we're able to support the FCT Education Secretariat to develop a sexual violence reporting and management framework for all schools in the FCT. And that's very important because, with our conversations with girls in the FCT, we identify that not only is there a problem with, the fact that quite a number of girls or even learners had seen sexual violence as normalized sexual violence, because they do not think that when something has happened over time, there's this tendency to take it as a norm, right? And sometimes when we talk about school related sexual violence, you think about it's in tertiary institution, but there's a lot happening in our secondary schools, a lot happening in our primary schools. And so we dig, we dig deeper to understand what the issues are, and we realize that one, there's an issue, there's a need for us to have a behavioral and attitudinal change among learners. They need to understand what constitutes sexual violence. They need to understand what are the boundaries that you shouldn't cross, and what are the boundaries that no one should cross, regardless of their position, within the school. And then we also realized that there was an issue with reporting of cases. Like about 65% of the girls we engaged did not report, cases of sexual violence that they experienced within the last 6 months, and they didn't report because they felt the school would not take action, because some of them also did not understand the right channels to report those cases.
I wanted to ask that.
And even for some of them that got the courage to develop to report, nothing was done, right? And so we realized there was no standard within the school as to how to manage cases of school-related sexual violence. And that's why we worked with the FCT Education Secretariat. We're able to develop that framework that clearly spelled out what the reporting channels looks like, and established a minimum standard for the management of cases of sexual violence within the school. And also, very importantly, established linkage between service providers, because a girl who has been abused needs psychological support, needs medical support, and legal support as well. So it's very important that these girls have access to all of these services. So that's what we were able to do, and we're able to not only support them in the development of this policy, we also took a step further to ensure implementation. And we're able to train gender officers across 77 schools in the FCT, and also we were down there, at the grassroots, going to, we were able to visit about 28 schools in the FCT, including the ones in the out-to-reach communities, the rural communities, and
those
generally,
needed the most.
and we're able to sensitize, more than 9,000 learners about what constitutes sexual violence. How can they report? What should they expect? How can they hold, education stakeholders accountable, to ensure that they are free, from all forms of violence within the school system. And we also had, and this is a very good initiative by Beyond the Classroom. Radio program is very important. We really need to get the message down to the grassroots. And so we also had a bit of, radio programs as well to sensitize parents, because they are important stakeholders. Our parents need to be active, actually proactive role in ensuring that their learners are free within the school. And you don't have to wait till when it happens to your own child.
Yes, because they say it takes a village to raise a child. So if you have to protect your own child, you start by protecting other people's children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Olanike. This is actually mind-blowing, because we have a lot of problems, right? I know, understand that. And so some people say, why are we not focusing on feeding the poor? What's all this and gender-based violence? So I get it, because I get all these comments all the time. People say, why are you focusing on the girl child? What about the boys? They're being abused. I get the questions all the time. But like I said, this is not the show or time for these conversations. We'll come back again and amplify this conversation and see how we can bring solutions to them. And my third question is, are there any laws that protect girls from tech facilitated gender-based violence and abuse? Because you already went ahead to explain what it was when you talked about technology amplifying this issue, and now we understand that girls get harassed, and all that. Are there any laws at all that you know of that is available to protect girls from tech facilitated gender-based violence and abuse?
Yeah, so I would want to start by saying that one of the issues with tech facilitated gender-based violence is that it's a trend. I mean, it's an emerging trend, right? So what it means is that on a daily basis, we are seeing different dimensions, different forms, of tech facilitated gender-based violence. So for example, we over the years we are used to having conversations about cyberbullying, trolling, and all of that, calling out people on social media. But now we have, with the introduction of AI, and everyone is trying to build skills with AI. There's a new level of challenge with that, and we have deep fakes. You have people using that, using AI to come up with images that are so embarrassing. Showing people in compromised situations. We have cyber stalking. We have online grooming, and I think this is one aspect of tech facilitated gender-based violence.
Grooming for our girls.
That we are not really talking about. I mean, in Nigeria currently we have quite a number of young learners, online, because our schools are also trying to be tech savvy, right? So schools are having website, they're having WhatsApp group, and we don't have rules and regulation guiding those platforms. And then you have people, gaining entrance into this platform to groom girls. Even the so-called cartoons that we used to trust have become, tools in the hands of perpetrators as well. So looking at all of these, different trends or emerging trends of tech facilitated gender-based violence, I wouldn't say that we have a sufficient legal framework for managing tech facilitated gender-based violence in Nigeria. However, we have some laws or some that have been in existence that probably need to look at and probably review,
so we are talking to ensure that it meets in the STEM and tech field. I hope you are listening to us.
Yeah, so we need to review this law to ensure that they are keeping up with what we are currently seeing in Nigeria. I would cite an example of a 23-year-old Afsor Lawa in Kwara State, that was killed and dismembered, earlier this year. We've had quite a number of those cases, because somebody, you've made friendship with somebody, online, and then you trusted that person enough to go out or to visit that person, right? So we need to really, really review, what our law says. We have the Cybercrime Act, 2015 that talks about criminalized digital offenses, cyber stalking, unauthorized data access, and all of that. We have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which was primarily designed, to address issues about gender-based violence. But you would also agree with me that as at the time the VAP Act was designed in 2015, we did not have much of tech facilitated gender abuse.
Yes.
So there's a lacuna, like there's a gap, that needs to be addressed in regards to that. Then we have the national gender policies, and the likes of those policies. So we have some existing, policies.
Somewhat, kind of,
Yeah, but again, I feel another challenge that we're having with managing tech facilitated gender-based violence is that, when you look at the trends that happen online, especially on Twitter, when somebody, makes it,
makes a remark
on someone, and the person decides to fight legally, it becomes a battle between the poor and the rich, right? There's that shifted focus from what the issue is really, because people, especially our politicians, have seen, are trying to use these existing laws to close the mouth of citizens from holding them accountable. So we need to also look at it, that how do we sensitize Nigerians to understand that there should be boundaries, that you shouldn't cross. Even though you're on social media, the fact that you have data does not mean
you can say whatever you want to say.
You understand? So that how do we now, ensure that we don't cross that line of, stopping that freedom of expression, inhibiting freedom of expression, and also still ensuring that the internet is safe for everyone.
That's a very difficult question, really. It's like I gave you a question, you responded to my question, and you gave me back a question. So, and I think and that's why I said, I was saying to the members of our team, I said, I don't think this conversation would be enough. However, I think so much is happening around the world, and we can't just sit and not have the conversation, which is why we're saying, even if we don't have enough time, we can still have the conversation. So, are there any actionable steps that you want to advise, right? Because there's so many things that people are doing right now. People on the radio, like we're here. When you came in, I saw you were still working, creating documents and stuff. People have events. We also have events going on. There's so much. There's rallies. There's so much going on. But is there any gap that you see, or any step that you see, actionable step that you see that is lacking, that non-profits, parents, carers, stakeholders, everyone that works or is working with girls or has any stake with girls should look at, a gap that is just missing? I think we should look at in this direction, because I remember when you were reading out the tech facilitated crime, and you're saying, there's no law exactly that really, that's something to look at. That's one. I hope that someone noted that. Are there other things that you've seen that you feel like around tech or around gender-based violence and abuse, we should look into this?
Yeah, I think right now we need to review what our programs look like when we talk about gender-based violence. Like, there's a slight shift in how we used to define sexual gender-based violence. Usually would say there's psychological violence, there's sexual violence, there's physical violence. Mm-hmm. So now we have the fourth arm now, which is the tech facilitated violence. So our programs should incorporate that, right? We need to take that extra mile to sensitize our girls to understand that, listen, your followers are not your friends. The people that you meet online, are not family, right?
Yeah.
So online friends remain online. You don't take it out, outside online. Like the online space, it's a lot of people wearing facades, and all of that, masks and all of that, online. So we need to sensitize our girls so that they don't innocently, fall into the hands of those people. We also need to, enlighten our girls about online grooming, right? A lot of
you need to understand what online grooming is, because people don't understand what grooming is on itself. Because I made a post about grooming, I described it, but didn't use the word grooming, and people were like, so this happens. So please, what is grooming exactly, so people can understand what online grooming is?
Okay, so I would say that online grooming, or let me define what grooming means exactly. Grooming is, nurturing a person, for an ulterior motive. So for example, just like the way we nurture our chicken, Christmas is around the corner, you're giving the chicken feeds and all of that, not necessarily because you love the chicken, but because so that the chicken will be big enough, at the end of the year. So that's just exactly what grooming is. So a lot of people that take advantage of girls, of children generally, a lot of times they are not strangers. They are people known to these children, right? So they take their time to build the girls' confidence
Trust
in
and
them,
all that.
trust
Yes.
and all of that, to the extent that, you know, these girls see them as their go-to person when they're having challenges, you know, and all of that. You know, they see them as that person they can trust with their little secrets,
Yes.
you know, and you know, with their little secret. And, you know, sometimes they even, you know, innocently agree to doing hard things, for example sharing nudes, you know, and all of that, and sometimes sharing private information like their house address, you know, and all of those things. Sometimes
because they've come to trust the people.
they've come to trust them, like they're like the social media, their Facebook uncle, you know, that Facebook auntie, you know, and all of that. And a lot of time it includes giving gifts, right? Oh, you don't have data today, then they give you gift.
Wow.
And then it feels like whatever it is I can't get from my parents, I can always speak to this person, and then the person gives it to me. So when they have built that confidence and that trust over time, then they move on to what their primary, you know, motive of that
was.
relationship, which is usually probably to devour or even to kill. And that's why a lot of stories that we've heard about girls traveling, you know, from school, some of them don't even bother to tell their parents. It's because they are fond of this person, they've trusted this person, forgetting that the person they are chatting with could even be using a fake profile picture. It could be using a fake name, you know. So, you know, that's what online grooming is. So we really need to take our time to educate our girls to spot, you know, a groomer, and to understand, always have it at the back of their mind that online friendship remains online.
Nice.
The moment you take
your
it,
friends.
you know, offline, then it becomes, you know, dangerous. And I would also say that yes, there's a need for us to review our laws, there's a need for us to review our policy, but it has to be citizen-led, right? The moment, you know, the politicians, you know, the elite and all of that, the influential people decide to be the one to sit, you know, and review, then it gives the impression that you're trying to take away our freedom of expression. So we really need to, you know, ensure that everyone is carried along in developing this kind of a policy, and also to ensure that we do not give room for people to take advantage of this to sanction Nigerians or to prevent Nigerians from asking for, demanding for, or holding our leaders accountable.
Yeah, so when you mean everyone being involved, we're not saying every single person on the planet or in Nigeria will have an MP. We're just saying at least representatives of every cluster will be involved. Just in case you're wondering, they didn't come and put together this policy. Don't even think about it. They are representative of different clusters that should be available in the room, inclusive, to ensure that this document, whatever it is prepared. My final question before we leave, because we just have a few minutes to go, maybe 2 minutes to go. You talked about online grooming. I want to end with your work with people who call guardians, who we also say parents, but most of them are not parents, of course, they're just carers of these children. Do you think that they have a role to play in helping with this online tech facilitated violence? And what should carers do to help to curb this as we run up?
I would say that parents need to be up and doing. I mean, in this generation, it's more challenging to parent in this generation because you need to keep up with the trend. So you can't just limit yourself to say, I'm not an internet person. No, you need to know what's happening on the internet. And it starts by sensitizing your words, like educate your children on what's going on out there. And then secondly, you can support them in developing their password and identifying information they cannot share, you know, with outsiders. The third one is to build trust. If your child is chatting with a new person online, they should trust you enough to say, Mommy, there's this new person that I've met online. So parents need to be friends with their children and promote that atmosphere where their children can ask them questions, relate to them, and share their experiences online. Also, for every social media platform, there are age limits. So parents need to adhere to that and to ensure that we do not, in the name of, you know, feeling woke, you know, and feeling nice, cross those lines, because it could pose, you know, a significant danger to the world.
Thank you so much, Olanika. Even I have been schooled today on this show. I can't wait to take back this learning into my work, even as a parent. And because sometimes I feel like, let's just give them the phone, let's just let them have the phone because they're disturbing us. You know, we need to realize that our children are important, and parenting is really a calling, it's a tedious work that we need to do. Like I said earlier, today marks the beginning, the first day of the 16th day of activism against gender-based violence and abuse. And the theme for this year is tech-facilitated gender-based violence, how to end it. And we all need to speak up against tech-facilitated gender-based violence and abuse. We'll be right back again on Thursday with another guest to talk about something completely different, but still on this matter. Olanike, thank you so much for coming. Really a pleasure to have you. And if you're just listening, you've missed a lot, but please tune in again on Thursday, 3 p.m. And I'll be right here on Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja. My name is Raquel Kasham Daniel, and I'm your host on the Amplify Show. Have a good afternoon.